Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Bruno Galan Talk Show, and I'm here with Nathan Dodge, who I'm having on the show for the second time. And how are you doing, Nathan?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. I'm writing very vigorously. Did you know? Are you familiar with Eric Flint, the author? Did you
Uh,
know Eric?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Eric Flint was a very famous author. He had his own publishing house, and he has purchased the right to several of my books. Well, he unfortunately passed away last year, and his heirs shut down the business. But fortunately, his chief editor, Walt Boyce, sort of took several of us with him and joined another company named Top of the World Publishing, a pretty good sized publishing house. They have several imprints, and they're going to publish my novels under the science fiction imprint, which is called Novus Mundi. And so I was lucky enough to get my novels, which, would have been kind of hanging out there with the heirs having shut down the business. The new publishing house picked up everything, so they're republishing my books. And the one I'm most excited about is a book I wrote. And I don't know if I talked to you about it. It's called I One. Okay, now this is the former cover. This had just come out when the heirs shut down Eric Flint's publishing house, Ring of Fire Press. And so when Novus Mundi got a hold of this, they got really excited because, as you know, there is a huge amount of interest right now in artificial intelligence, right? And this is basically a book about the first fully intelligent, sentient artificial intelligence. So they're changing the name to A.I. One, and they're bringing it out, I believe, next week. And so it'll have a republishing date there, even though the original publishing date sort of never happened, okay, because it was just coming out when the publishing house got shut down. Then they're going to bring out all my books again. And in addition, I had sold a couple of books to Walt Boyce that WordFire had not brought out yet, and it's a new series I've created called The Bureau, and it's about a guy who is and this happens 100 years or more in the future. He is sort of a fixer, and this bureau he belongs to, this guy's name is Riggs, and the bureau he belongs to, when a law enforcement or military organization has a problem they can't solve, they call the bureau, and they send in one of their so-called associates. Well, Riggs is their senior associate, and so he goes in, and I'm pretty proud of that book. It's a really exciting book. Starts off with a terrorist attack when he's just a student, basically, or just gotten out of school, and he manages to kill 3 terrorists, and interviews this fellow named who won't give him his name, and he says, I have a proposition for you, and the proposition is to join the bureau. And then we skip forward 15 years later when he's sent to another world which is having a terrible problem with a serial killer, and so he begins to investigate, and it turns out that, of course, the serial killer problem is not nearly what it seems, and he has to piece together what's happening, and he ends up in a desperate situation where a nuclear warhead is involved. And so it turns out that that the Bureau, I think, is going to be a pretty exciting book. And I'm not sure when it's going to be out yet. They're telling me a couple, 3 months. Unfortunately, they're trying to bring out all my old books, plus a couple, 3 other authors' old books, plus my new books. And so even though I'm working on my 3rd Bureau novel now, it's not clear when I'm going to get number 1 and number 2 published, just because I've got so many other books for them to bring out. I sold my first book, you may remember, we talked about this, in February of 2018. And the 2nd Bureau novel, which I just sold, is my 18th novel. So I've been working pretty hard these last
Yeah, you're very productive.
5 years.
Really impressive. It's really impressive at that pace. So the Bureau is the name of the series, and how's what's the name of the first book?
It's called the Bureau series, but that's also the name of the first novel.
Okay, so the first novel is called the Bureau, and then the series will also be called the Bureau. Okay, very well.
Yeah, right.
It sounds like some sort of like hard boiled sci-fi noir story, which I always like.
It's very noir. You're very insightful to bring that up. And it's sort of noir in the 22nd century. Okay.
And yeah, I remember I quite enjoyed, even though I had like a few nitpicks regarding how the technology would work, but I really enjoyed. I don't know if you read the Richard Morgan novels of Takeshi Kovacs or Kovacs. I don't know. It's called Altered Carbon. Is the first book.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. It's kind of like a noir sci-fi series as well. And I like that style. Although I had a bit of a nitpick there regarding how the technology would work and what it meant, but let's not go into that because we're talking about your stuff. But I'll let you say I'm a really big fan of that mix of sci-fi and noir. Like, you've got me hooked if you put those two together. I wanted to ask you actually, so what does that mean for the rights of your book? So for example, if the current publisher had not been able to get those rights, would your books have been in limbo, or would they have them back to you, or?
I would have probably had to sue or something like that. I will say this, Eric's wife sent me a formal letter, reverting all the rights of my books to me.
Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice to make it that clean.
Yeah, and so the books now are basically under my copyright again, and so I can go ahead then and have Top of the World, and under their Novus Mundi imprint, they can print them, and that's legal.
Kudos to her, and my condolences as well for her husband. But that is such a nice move. That is such.
Let me tell you, Eric Flint was one of the nicest guys I ever met. He was a sweet old curmudgeon. Everybody that knew him loved him, and he is. Let me tell you, he is sorely missed in the world of science fiction. He created a very famous series, you may or may not have heard of it, called the 1632 series, and you look like you remember that.
Is that okay? No, you know what? I'm not going to take guesses because I don't want to get it wrong. And
it's about this area in mid-America that, through an accident, is the whole area, I mean square miles, is thrown back into Germany in 1632, and that's when Germany was a bunch of little baronies, basically. And these people have to learn to live there for the rest of their lives because they're there for good. And what resulted was about 30 or 40 novels with Eric and also some of his co-writers. Wow. And it was really interesting because they began to explore if this really happened. And these people bring back a lot of their technology, right? For instance, there's an electric generating plant there in this area that goes back into the past. And so they began to change history dramatically. And so it was a really interesting series, and he was a great friend. I showed him in 2019, I believe. I showed him one of my novels and a short story I'd written, and he said, I want to look at these, and he took them back with him. He sent me a contract within about 3 days, and he bought 7 of my novels, and Walt would have bought 2 more if they hadn't closed it down, but Walt has now bought the novels from my new publisher. So I'm pretty excited. Eric was a great guy.
And he sounds like it. And for transparency, some of this you had already told me, but for the sake of talking about it on the show, I'll let you explain it. But we actually had a few email exchanges about especially the loss of I imagine what you would consider a friend at this point. And it was very moving, the emails you sent me. They're really like I mean, that tells you're a good writer, because they were very concise, and yet there was a lot of emotion carrying through anyway in the email you sent me. I felt it. And I felt your loss, and my condolences to you and to his wife, definitely, and to the readers.
It was a great loss. And one of the things about Eric was that he mentored dozens, maybe hundreds of writers, me being just one of them. Yeah. And so he left behind a bunch of people that were very grateful to him, very, very grateful.
Legacy.
But anyway, all's well as it ends well. So I do have a new publisher.
Yes.
And that publisher is going to take over all my books eventually, including the ones that Kevin J. Anderson's Wordfire Press bought. And so I'm going to have all my books under one publishing banner, which I think that'd be really good.
So what happened with Kevin J. Anderson's Wordfire?
Well, it's still open, but Kevin's turned 60. He's getting up there himself, and he's still writing furiously. And I don't know if you know it or not, but these two Dune movies that have just come out.
What was that? Dude.
Well, he's an executive producer on Dune, because he and
the producer on the movie.
Yeah, because he.
Just imagine he would make a lot of money because people would buy the novels he made with the son. But I didn't know that.
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Brian Herbert is Frank Herbert's son. Okay.
Yeah.
He and Kevin have written something like 20 other Dune novels.
Yeah.
And so when they started to make the original Dune into a movie for about the third time now, they retained Brian and Kevin as executive producers in the movie, and I think they even were involved in writing the script. So pretty interesting. Kevin's had his hands full, and for that reason, he offered my books to Top of the World as well. So all my books are going to be basically under Top of the World.
He got way busier, and he couldn't.
He's
rate the books anymore.
He's not even going to publish much under the Wordfire banner anymore, except maybe some of his own work.
Fair enough. Okay, that makes it. Well, at least you're blessed with having worked with people who have decency when they just give you back the rights or let you publish it. So that's really good, because there's a lot of horror stories out there of people who have poured their hearts into works that are then caught in limbo, right? And no one to see them. And that's just the most sad thing. I mean, I guess the saddest thing would be stolen credit, like what happened to Bill Finger, who was the actual creator of Batman, but not Bob Kane. But beyond that, I think having worked in limbo is also very sad for an author. And so you're very lucky that the people you work with were all decent people, it seems.
Yeah, one of the great things is I've had three great mentors, people that helped me out, because I got into writing a little bit late, and one was Eric, one was David Farland, who I think you know or have heard of, one of the great fantasy writers, and unfortunately David also passed away last year, and now Kevin is kind of ratcheting back what he's doing. He does hold a writers conference in February, and I will be going to that conference. I'll get to see him then, but unfortunately, he's the only one of the guys that mentored me that's left. So that's been quite a sea change for me to lose two of these guys together. But Kevin is a great guy, like you said. He really he has a million fans, and he's published 170 novels now. Can you believe that?
I read a few of them. I read back when the Star Wars prequels were coming out. I got really into Star Wars. I read the Jedi Academy trilogy.
Yeah, Jedi Academy trilogy, right? And they asked him to write that, and he did, and it made all the bestseller lists. I mean, it was really something.
Right, for Star Wars, especially back then.
Yeah.
Back then, yeah.
But Kevin is going to be ratcheting back a little bit. For one thing, he's working on movies now, and there's even the thought they may make another Dune movie, I think. So he's going to be really busy, and I think he's going to be doing a little bit less in terms of his publishing house.
Yeah, they even have a series coming out for HBO Max, I think. About the sisterhood.
Yes.
And I imagine if he's executive producer on that one, I imagine he's also gonna be on the show because it's supposed. Then even Lev is supervising the show as well, apparently. So it's all like, so it all like goes together when you look at it and you go, yeah, that's the same universe. It doesn't feel like disconnected, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I love that first movie. It was really the latest one. I really liked it.
I think a lot of people feel like that's the first time that movie makers ever did Frank Herbert right. You know what I mean? Because the earlier movies were there were good things about them, but they didn't get very good reviews, frankly.
Well, the one they did for TV, what I mean, there's obviously the David Lynch one, which you could tell David Lynch kind of wanted to do his own thing, like, but it was a different time, you know, like just any adaptation was gonna get really changed. It was like that back then.
Yeah.
And filmmakers kind of back then, I think, overall considered themselves above the original work, and they would just do whatever they wanted with it. There was no reverence back then for, you know, for the original work, if you will. I mean, if I generalize, and maybe that's unfair to the filmmakers as well, who maybe had their reasons, but I'm just kind of like, as a fan and geek, I'm just generalizing, I guess. I think that the one for TV, they were just limited by budget. I think they did their best. They were really, you could tell there was an attempt to be faithful, but they were also working like, as I like to say, they were boxing with a hand tied behind their back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've read, I don't know if you've read the book Dune or not, but the description of those worms, the great worms, you know, that are the kind of the center, is so tremendous that I think this is the first time the worms have ever been done justice. Okay, so this second part, which is coming out and which deals mainly with what's his name? Gosh, I can't. Anyway, the hero's name. Anyway, he's on the planet Arrakis, you know, and so yeah, I think the second movie is going to be all about Arrakis and about how they train the worms, you know, and ride the worms, and I think that's going to be really something, you know.
Oh, the teaser trailer was him. I mean, we gotta go back to your work, of course, but just to kind of conclude on that one, that teaser trailer of like, it's like, don't show off, and then he goes on the worm and he's like riding it.
Yeah,
I could tell. Oh my god, like the Denis Villeneuve is such a good filmmaker because he really conveys that force of these days. You know, like you can do anything with CGI, but you need a filmmaker who understands how to use it, how to have that momentum, because it's like anything, or CGI or not, like even car chases. We're like, you know, the Batman, the last movie.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if you've seen it. That car chase, you really felt it, and it's little tricks where they would put the camera or the water on the lens, so you feel like it's the rain is actually there. You know, like, and it's just in the sound, and so I was looking at it, so you feel like you're in that car and it's going fast, and those are tricks that a good filmmaker will convey. And I need to rewatch that teaser trailer, because when he's riding that worm, you feel like you're on top of a massive thing and there's sand all around you. I don't know how to explain it. It's just so freaking well done.
I agree. I've seen that trailer and I loved it. I thought it was great. And when is that thing going to be out? Is it Christmas or is it later this summer?
It's actually pretty soon. It's actually pretty soon. You know, it's I think what's going to happen is, I think we're coming to a point where like geek stuff dominated the marketplace to a point where it kind of became cocky, and I think not as much effort was being put into, let's call it, geek entertainment. And now what I think is going to happen is, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but now it's going to be like any other genre where if you want to stand out, it's not enough to make it a superhero thing. It's not enough to make it a sci-fi thing. It's not enough to make it a fantasy thing and adapt it. You have to have good people behind it. And I think it's going to kind of, the quality is going to be like any other thing, like romantic comedies, action movies, whatever. Like, I think what's going to happen is a balance is going to be found, and we're going to go back to, it cannot just be enough to be based on a book for it to stand out. It has to be well made on top of that, like, which is good. It's good for cinema, really. But yeah, and for the books they're adapted, like, I think it's, I think a lot of authors, when they get adapted, and I hope that happens to you someday. Whether
too. if you have George Lucas' telephone number or Steven Spielberg's, I would appreciate it. Okay.
Well, one of my guests in October will be, if everything goes well with their schedules and all that, it's supposed to be, is a childhood friend who's a director of photography. Oh my God, I can't speak in English tonight. Director of photography who in Spain has been winning prizes. So if Spain is looking for sci-fi novels, I'll let them know. But yeah. So okay. Let's see. So the Bureau's not out yet. You don't have a date. Let's go through a list of what's coming out with your new publisher. So what's out already in the moment?
None of them are out yet because this all happened this year. But A.I. One,
they can write
the first novel, is due. The only thing they were waiting on is the finalization of the cover, and it will be due out. The book should be due out. It should be at Amazon within a week or two. Now, here's the good news. Top of the World is negotiating with some brick and mortar stores. I'm not sure which, but I don't know if it's, I don't know. Let's see, Borders went out of business. So what are the big ones now? BAM is one of them, right? Books A Million, and Barnes & Noble, of course, is still out there. And so they're doing some negotiations. So there's a chance that some of my work will be in bookstores at some time in the future.
But if you have Chapters or Indigo in the US, I mean, Canada, Chapters or Indigo is the same owners. They're like the main bookstore. I don't know if they're in the US as well.
I don't know. I really don't know. The two I know of, I live in the Dallas area.
Yeah.
And I don't live in Dallas, but I do live in the area. And the two major bookstores in this area are Barnes & Noble, which has several big stores here in town, and Books A Million has a couple, BAM, BAM. And the others I don't know. But I would love to see the opportunity to get some of my work into a Barnes & Noble. That would be pretty great.
If I go to a bookstore and I see like one of your books there with your name, I'd be really excited for you.
Yeah, I would be too. And A.I. One, they are planning a pretty big promotion for A.I. One simply because AI is the buzzword of the year, right? And so they're, from what Walt tells me, who's still my editor now that he's at Top of the World, he tells me that they're going to push this pretty hard because they believe that there is a very good chance that it could be a big seller. And so keep your fingers crossed. The next thing, I do know I don't know when the Bureau is going to be out, although I've heard it. The first book should be out in 3 or 4 months. But yeah. I also was contacted by their marketing guy the other day.
Yeah.
And his name is Jonathan Sugar, I believe. But anyway, he's the marketing guy for Top of the World. And he was very interested in Subway and wanted me to provide some character studies, which I did, for the major characters on my Subway series. I wrote if you remember, I wrote 3 novels: Subway in the Sky, Subway to the Stars, and Subway to the Universe. And it's about these 2 scientists and a technician who come up with a way to set up a wormhole between any 2 places.
It opens up hell or something.
Yeah, and so and so it's called first one is Subway in the Sky, and right in the first chapter they finally get a subway open between Earth and a moon base. And then in the second chapter, several years have gone by, and there's subways to Rhea and Titan and Mercury and Mars and there's subways all over the earth from point to point. And so they apparently like this one pretty well too. So he wrote for these character studies. So I'm assuming that Subway will be back out pretty soon.
Well, I imagine if they ask you to do
it. Subway was one of the books I showed Eric later on. I first showed him my Portal series, and that came out a while back. And then he started
the one I think I mentioned where they I think I confused Subway with Portal actually earlier.
Yeah, the Portal. Now the Portals is a different thing. The Portals is a novel about a young man set in a dystopian future where the earth has gotten very cold. The sun, something's happened with the sun. It's gotten very cold. And on this planet, these holes appear, and they're called hell holes.
Yeah, okay, and that's the one I thought you were talking about. See, I got confused.
Yeah, and so Eric was such a card. He wrote me when he was getting ready to publish my first book, which was I had called it The Long Winter. And so he called me up on the phone. He said, "Hey," I said, "Hey," and he said, "Your titles really suck." And I said, "Oh, they do?" He said, "Yeah, they're terrible. I'm going to change them." And I said, "Eric, you paid for it. You do whatever you want with it." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to call it The Portals of Hell." And I said, "Actually, that's a pretty good name, Eric." And so he called the first one The Portals of Hell. And the funny thing was, I'd written the first two books. And I'd called the second one The Inklings of Spring. So he called it The Portals of Spring. And then I needed a final novel. So I just went into high gear. It's been about 3 months. And I'd had this novel in the back of my mind for years, but I'd never written it. So I wrote it, and he called that The Portals of Summer. And so it really made it. And I had to thank him. I think that's a very much more effective title for the first one than The Long Winter. The only thing I didn't like about them was I thought the covers, I didn't like the cover art very well.
Okay.
But they're going to be, I think, redone when they're brought out by Novus Mundi. So when the time comes for that, I guess they'll let me know. But God knows when they'll all be out, because they're trying to bring out about, I don't know, 50 novels from about, well, at least half a dozen writers that became orphans when Ring of Fire shut down.
Yeah.
And Eric's publishing it now. So it'll take a while, but I'm patient. I know they're coming out. And the real thing is, I'm really excited about A.I. One because they got so excited. And so they told me they were going to push it real hard. So this may be the first time I really get some publicity behind a release. Most of these smaller houses, and I do have an email list, but you pretty much have to do your own thing with your email list because they don't do a lot of publicity. These smaller houses, they do a little bit, but not a whole lot. So I'm excited about A.I. One coming out, but like I said, I don't have the date yet, but it's imminent right now.
I want to say one thing. I want to say real quick, and I want to ask you about A.I. One because it's the one that's coming next. So even though you're gonna be really excited for the Bureau, because it sounds like some sort of like Jack Reacher type character with sci-fi, and
it's very much. Now I didn't pattern him after Jack Reacher, but after I wrote it, Walt mentioned that, and I think that's probably true. He is sort of a Jack Reacher character. He's not anything like Jack Reacher, but he's kind of a Jack Reacher character.
In the vein of, it sounded like it, but again, that was my impression. I'm happy I got it right, and you're not telling me that I got it completely off. But I like those kind of characters because it's almost like, I don't want to get too much into it, but society has almost gotten apologetic about like tougher characters, and I'm like, well, they have their place. They have their place, and they're fun, and they're also fun in their own way. You just have to, maybe it's not just as obvious, anyway. But
well, the AI One character is really the different from anything I've ever written. He's an android, and we're getting this. He's talking in the first person.
Yeah.
He's an android. He doesn't have sex, right? He is an asexual creature, right? He's an automaton, except he's intelligent, right? Yeah. He's sentient. He's self-aware.
Yes.
And he is programmed to be a servant to the human race. And at one point, he's talking to another android, because eventually they make some more copies of him. And this android, they make one bad copy, and this kind of becomes a rogue android who he eventually kills. And he said, how can you stand these miserable, petty, nasty humans? You know? And so he says, and they call him One, and he does have a name when he goes out in the world, but he says, don't you understand? These people arose out of the muck. They arose from primitive life forms and became intelligent on their own, and they were smart, have gained enough intelligence to create us. He said, how can you not help but love your progenitors who have done that? And he can't understand why the other android is so skeptical and actually just kind of turns up his nose at the human race. And eventually this robot becomes kind of uncontrollable, and so he kills him, which brings him great sadness because this is his brother.
Yeah.
You know, and but this is not my happiest book either, although it does have funny parts in it. It's a story that I think maybe is written to make some comments on prejudice, because one of the first things that One discovers is that a lot of people hate him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's intelligent and capable, and oh my God, he could take jobs away from us. and so he experiences a lot of bad things along the way, because and he's all alone for a long time. He's unique. Eventually, with this one brother who turns out to be a terrible mistake in the way he was created. Mm-hmm. And it isn't until near the end that there are a couple of other androids that he can confide in and talk to. And but he says, I know I was programmed to love the human race, and therefore I can't help it, but I admire them tremendously. You know, they arose from nothing. They became something out of nothing. And he says, they became a great enough they gained enough intellect, they created us. Yes. And so he is sort of a great fan of the human race, even though he concedes very soon that there are a lot of very unadmirable people out in the world, and he encounters some of them, of course. And he goes on assignments. He gets an assignment to go out and pretend to be human, and that's why he's got a beard, because android skin is really good in the novel. It's gotten really, but it's not quite good enough, so he can't be beard free. He's got to have a big beard so it hides a lot of the skin. But he does go out into the world and behave as a human, and he has these experiences interacting with humans. And at one point, and he does have a sense of humor. At one point, they give him a demonstration. He's finally revealed to the world, and they give a demonstration, and he's gone on a radio talk show, and I modeled it after a talk show here in Dallas. And so he's being questioned by these guys, and one of them says, well, you're a pretty clever guy. I said, have you ever thought about going on the radio too? And he says, no, I've got a face more for television. And so, he's kind of taking a little shot at the guys that are, I have a face for television. So they say, okay, we get it, And so he has a few instances like that. And once or twice he has to defend himself. Once some people, he's walking down a dark street and a couple of thugs jump him. Well, that's not going to be a fair fight, you know.
Okay.
And so he manages to not kill any of them, although it's actually there's three of them I think that jump him. And in fact, he hurts one pretty badly. And he tells the other two. One of them tries to shoot him, but he takes a gun away and breaks it in two. And he said, "You better get your friend to the hospital and quit bothering me." And they're so scared they just pick the guy up and shove him in their car and get out of there. So he is a compassionate, interesting personality, but he does have a little wit about him, and it occasionally shows itself. But by and large, this is a serious story, and it does have a lot to do with prejudice and with hatred and with why do we behave the way we do? You know, why are so many humans, you know, I used to have a friend that would say, people are no damn good. That would be his comment. Well, and so he discovers there are a lot of people like that. There's some good people too, but he has a lot of interesting experiences. And this is probably one of my most serious novels. I think it's interesting. I don't think it's not going to make you sad, but it is probably a little bit more serious than, for instance, Subway in the Sky is also it's told in the first person by this engineer who helps develop the subway, you know, these tunnels. Yeah. But it's pretty lighthearted and it has a lot of humor in it, and some of the people in Subway in the Sky are just naturally funny. And there's it also has an interesting romance. Subway in the Sky has a romance between a 38-year-old male and a 55-year-old female, and it's a serious romance. And it's true, it's far enough in the future that DNA re-engineering can keep you younger longer. But this guy his name is Scotty, and he falls in love with this technician because she's truly a great person, and he's married to this absolute awful woman who she's beautiful, she's glamorous, and she's a conniver. She is just absolutely an awful person who sleeps with everybody behind his back and all those things.
Oh boy.
And so in the first book, he's trying to divorce her.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot more lighthearted because, for instance, his talks with his lawyer are generally pretty funny. His lawyer's a smartass, and a lot of this stuff goes on like that, and it's an interesting story. But I really think I One, which is to become A.I. One, is a much more serious book in terms of the fact that it considers some problems that we have today.
Well, you know, I kind of thought of two things, and already the way that I think you
clicked something accidentally. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said that. One thing that you know, good sci-fi is it just has a setup where people are going to think and interpret things their own way, right? And so what you told me, like how the android sees humanity, and already I'm thinking, and you might have your own personal answer for this, but good sci-fi will make people think, and everyone will see it differently, right?
Right.
Even though there might be the word of God, which is the author, and they might say, but nevertheless, good ideas make you think. And already I was thinking, okay, so the android has to, I thought of a few things. I was thinking the android has to love humanity, he's been programmed that way, but he does respect them and intellectually. But then I was thinking, is that really a natural thought process, or is he justifying his programming? And you know, so that's a really interesting thought. And what I mean to say is maybe the way you wrote it is it's 100%, as you said, he's programmed to take care of humans, but he has an intellectual reason for it. But I'm already thinking, oh, maybe he needs a reason to, like, you know, it's kind of like how when people have character traits that they need to It's just how they're wired, but they need to justify it with an intellectual reason. So I was thinking along in those terms. So that already I kind of like the fact that you elaborate on the thought process, and like maybe your novel gives an answer or maybe not, but I like that it's already making me think. It's like, okay, if he's having this conversation, and you want the hero to have these philosophical challenges with the opponent, not just physical but also philosophical. That also makes for good sci-fi. So but I was also thinking of two things when you're telling me that. One is, they many years ago they had like a little robot go out, and it was like basically a little cute robot, and they put like a sign in. It was kind of like automated, and it would just ask for a lift to get from one city to another. So it's kind of like a test they were doing. And I don't remember, they got to a city and some people trashed it, completely destroyed it. So they met. Imagine that people gave it lifts for a while, and it had a camera and stuff. I think I'm not sure I remember how it worked, but basically it got lifts, and for a while it worked, and then it got to a place where some people found it and destroyed it. They just saw a cute little robot that someone made, and their reaction was to trash it. And I'm like, can you imagine the hard work that went into that little guy? Now, it wasn't like a proper sentient AI or anything like that, but it just still, it's kind of like this thing that someone created, and it's still kind of anthropomorphic to some degree, even though it's more of a Wall-E type looking thing, or it wasn't like human looking, but it's still kind of made to look like a cute toy or something. And people still have this impulse to, like, human beings saw it and we're like, yeah, we're going to destroy this, which to me is very like in bad taste, because it's
I think you will see some of that in AI One, because some people just have natural antipathy towards something like that.
Yep.
And that's something that One has to deal with, because and it puzzles him because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand why that these certain class of people naturally either hate him or want to hurt him. And he has some pretty close calls. And as a matter of fact, near the end, it gets to be very serious, because there are riots and there's all kinds of things going on. And it's because people don't want androids. They're scared of them. They think they'll take jobs away from hardworking Americans, despite the fact he was created for a certain actually the reason he was created was to be a care nurse in a facility for older people. That's a very hard job, and oftentimes it's hard. Those facilities have hard time staffing up, and so that's why he was created. And we deal with that a little bit in there. But One is AI One is probably the most thoughtful novel I've written. A lot of my stuff I've written, even The Bureau, although it's more, like you said, more noir, there's lighthearted parts in it, and the hero himself is a smartass. Okay, I mean, he really is, But AI One's pretty serious, and I told at one time, I told Eric before he passed away, I said, I read this novel and it's kind of hard for me to believe I wrote it because it's not like anything else I've ever done. Most of my novels are adventures, and this isn't an adventure really. It's a, what would you call it? It's a thought piece on what AI may mean to us. And so it's a little different.
Yeah, and maybe introspective, right?
Yes, I think it's very introspective, and not like my usual stuff. I usually go more for adventure novels, and that's what The Bureau is. The Bureau is basically it's a little more noir-like than Jack Reacher, but it's that kind of thing. There's a lot of action. There's odd twists and turns. There's the hero is in terrible danger any number of times, right? And so the Bureau is more like my normal style of writing. A.I. One is different. Actually, the Portal novels are the only thing I've written that's close to A.I. One, and that is because they are a little bit more introspective in dealing with the fact that this guy is a failure in life as he starts out, and he has to learn how to be a success. And so it's a little darker, particularly the second novel is of the trios. But the Subway in the Sky, the Subway novels, all of the Shadow Warriors novels, which are really my young adult novel, they're more adventure oriented, you know.
But I find it interesting you said the second one is darker. I think that really works where I think there's a pattern for adventure and everything where like you can kind of do on their sequels. Like you have the first one, which is like the direct adventure, if you will, which might have its own already seeds for later darkness, you know, but it's kind of like mostly you keep it more straightforward. Then you have the second, kind of like Star Wars, like the New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, where Empire Strikes Back is like where everything goes crashing down and everything goes wrong, right? And then you pick it up. The last one is the heroes just pick themselves back up, and then it can have like this lighthearted ending or a bittersweet Pyrrhic victory, or you know, it can then from there it can kind of do whatever from that second installment, if you will. But I like when I hear, it's kind of funny. I don't know if it's just the influence of the original trilogy of Star Wars, but I like hearing that the second one is the darker one. And I guess it can be interesting if you say the third one is the most dark, but which it happens sometimes. But I find it interesting when the second one kind of picks it up, and you're gonna go places where the first you didn't go in the first one, but it makes it all the more meaningful for a second. You know, I think it's a good tempo for a series.
Yeah, I'm excited about the Bureau series. I've really put a lot of work into that. I'm about a third of the way through with my number 3 novel in the series. I'll finish it probably by the end of the summer. But I don't. I'm waiting to hear from Novus Mundi. If Walt tells me they've given me the okay, I told them I would promise them 3 more novels next year in the Bureau series. So that would mean by the end of next year, I'd have 6 novels in the Bureau series. And that means I'm going to have to come up with some neat new ideas, right? But I think I can do it. I think the Bureau novels lead themselves to, you know, you can, the Bureau is a fixer group for this alliance of about 40 or 45 planetary systems. So he can go all kinds of different places. For instance, in the first one, he's involved with this serial killer, which turns out that is much more complicated than anybody thought.
You hooked me there. That was a great hook. I was like, because I read him like, okay, serial killer, that's cool. That's like for a sci-fi noir thing, and then you're like, oh, but it's more than that. And say, oh, do tell, but don't tell. Actually, don't spoil it. But you know what I mean.
Yeah. And then the second one goes a different direction, and the third one actually happens on Earth, because Earth is having the year that this is taking place is 2191. And it's the year for a presidential inauguration. And the president is, what's happening is that the president is being inaugurated, but he's also holding a giant celebration because in 2141, the Earth created a thing called the World Alliance. It was kind of a successor to the United Nations. And so this is the 50th anniversary. So there's going to be an enormous celebration with tens of thousands of visitors and dignitaries from all over this planetary alliance. Well, you know something bad's going to happen when you get all these people together. And so that's kind of where that's going. So hopefully that'll be an interesting, and it's much more straightforward in that it's going to build to a climax. Bad things are happening, but you know there's going to be something really bad happen, and that's what's building toward the climax. Okay.
But it seems like you have an affinity for that smartass character then, because you're like, oh, I can write 3 more right away, and you're like, okay. And you sound like, like every book, and I have to pick up the Portal series. I think I've become I used to be a fast reader, but being a dad, working, and like trying to write some stuff on my side, like I have so little time now. And I used to be such a fast reader. Now I'm looking at books that I started a year ago. I'm like, how is this still on my shelf? How am I still reading this? But right. So in a weird way, I used to like look down on people who wanted like this. Oh, this is an easy read. I'm like, come on, man. But now I'm like, okay, that has its time and place for sure. I mean, I don't look down on easy reads, but I mean when people limited themselves to that is what I mean.
Yeah.
But I know that from your books. Like, I'll have to say that I can't believe it's been like a year since our last conversation, because I wanted to pick up some of your stuff, and here I am, and I haven't even finished, I think, any of the books that I was reading when we talked to each other. So I've become a very slow reader to my Great Depression, to be honest. Well, I'm exaggerating now. I'm not depressed about it, but I'm ashamed to say that I don't read fast anymore, given time constraints. But I'm really excited about the Bureau and the AI one. I'm really excited there's a push behind it, because like you said, it's very relevant right now, and no one really knows where it's heading, because there's some really inspirational stories and there's some really horrible stories. Like, they did a simulation, I think it was, I don't know if it was the US Army, but some army or some other military entity, I forget which one.
Yeah.
Some simulation where the AI was controlling drones. Not really, it's all like in the AI's mind, if you will. It's all like a simulation in a computer, basically. But a computer thinks it's sending drones. A computer thinks, and it's controlled by human beings. So, people say, well, the human being can always pull the plug or something. Actually, what it did in the simulation, again, no, it wasn't actually controlling drones, but it's what the AI thought it was doing. It had targets. It had this mission to accomplish, but it's controlled by a human being. At the end of the day, the human says yes or no. So that was the failsafe, right? Okay, look, we're going to see how it goes, but a human being deciding yes or no, you're not going to do this. So can I bomb this place? No. What the AI did in the simulation is it tried to send drones to kill a human. This life to be able to accomplish this mission. So at the end, what happens, what you realize is that, they say, oh, humans are contradictory. Let's make an AI. It's not going to be. Life is contradiction. You can't, like it's like there's so many dilemmas. Like you have to weigh the pros and cons. And so what you realize is that even the AIs will end up doing things they're not supposed to be doing. Or so again, it brings back to your idea of these two androids having different perspectives. And it makes you wonder, like, if they were to do the program again, would it, I don't know if they did it again, but is it always what's going to happen, or do different AIs end up with different personalities depending on what happens? Or so this is all stuff that you wonder, like, are there going to be AIs who listen more, or are all the AIs going to be like, I'm going to kill this guy so I can do whatever I want because this is my mission? And what if you make the mission listening to the guy then, instead of accomplishing the goal, but he tells you yes or no? There's so many variants and variables, and they're like anything else in human history. Let's see what happens. Let's see what we do with it. There's great potential for abuse, though. For even the last Mission Impossible, mild spoilers, but the enemy is actually an AI. I don't know if you knew this. I haven't seen a movie yet, but apparently the latest Mission Impossible, they're going up against an AI who kind of controls things electronically and all that. So now it's not even that far fetched, to imagine these things.
I have not seen that. I did see the new Indiana Jones movie, but I have not seen Mission Impossible, although it opened yesterday, I think, didn't it? I believe it did.
Something like that.
No, it opens next Wednesday. That's when it is, I think.
I think it had a premiere already somewhere. I thought it might be. I haven't last time I went to the movies was Super Mario with my son.
Yes.
I wanted to go see The Flash because Michael Keaton. I haven't had the time, so I'm gonna have to wait for that one to be in at home. How was the Dial of Destiny? Was it any good? There people are very divided on it.
It was it was I liked it. I thought it was good. It had kind of a dumb premise. It had to do with the Antikythera mechanism. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Antikythera mechanism was a real piece of gear. It's a gear mechanism device that was discovered on a ship at the bottom of the ocean. Nobody knows what it was used for, but they think it was used to do predictions of the positions of the planets and stuff like that. It's a very sophisticated mechanism to have been made about 2,000 years ago because it had gears and pulleys. I mean, it had all kinds of stuff. And I've seen a picture of it. It's kind of badly decomposed because it'd been sitting on the bottom of the ocean for about 2,000 years. But in this story, they find one, and supposedly it can predict when a time window will open between two different eras on Earth. And so it's kind of interesting. I don't know if I don't know how it's doing at the box office. I'd like to see the Tom Cruise thing because I understand that thing he does, that motorcycle jump he does. He really did that.
Wow, that guy is something else. Like he did many times. Apparently, he made one jump, and I think most people would be like, "Okay, you know what? I just chat my pants. I'm done for the day." And the guy went like, "You know what? I think I can hold on to a motorcycle a bit longer." He said, or he said something like that, or he said, "I can wait a bit more after a jump." I don't remember. It was something like he thought he could have done it better, and he did a jump 6 times or something.
And he held on to the side of an airplane one time when it took off. So he's done all kinds of nutty things.
Like the tallest tower in the world or something. Like,
yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy.
how do you beat that marketing wise? I don't know. That's Indiana Jones. What I think is that I'm honestly a bit tired of the deconstruction of our heroes because I don't even want to see it. Like, this is a mild spoiler. I think it's been all over the internet. I'm gonna hold up my hands if anyone doesn't want spoilers for the movie that I've heard about. Put me on mute, and when I put my hands down, I won't be talking about it. But the fact that they start a movie and his son died, I just thought it was mean spirited. All you have to do is say like, "Oh, he's busy doing something else." It's just like, and then they make him like really depressed and drinking and okay, putting my hands down. So to me, Indiana Jones has always been a flawed hero. From the very first movie starts with him making a mistake and running away from the ball, and then the hero double crosses him. He gets him by surprise. Indiana Jones was always a human character. Was always a flawed human character who persevered and won through determination and belief in what he did. And like he was never the best fighter. He was never the guy who you could never outsmart. He got outsmarted. He got double crossed. Some people were better fighters than him, like in the first movie where he's getting outboxed by the guy, and like then Marion comes to the plane, and so it was just like this guy who just persevered. So it's not like you have this perfect Superman of a hero that you need to bring down a peg or two. He was always human. So to me, to bring him down to a level of he's drinking and his son died, and I was like, I know they did that with Logan with the same filmmaker, the same director, but Logan Wolverine is a very different character. That is a tragic character. That's a character who, like, you can give Logan a happy ending, but if you give him a sad ending, it's also not a shock, right? It's not like, oh my god, I can't believe Wolverine's story is a sad one. Like, but Indiana Jones, I guess when people watch Indiana Jones, they want to be uplifted. That music is tan 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 tan. It's like
yeah.
Personally, I respect if people disagree, I respect that. I fully respect that different people have different opinions, but and it's not even to do with the with the other characters in the movie. It's really just the treatment of Indiana Jones. I didn't want to see that. It's not. That's a story that can be explored, but I think that was the wrong character to explore it with, in my opinion. And maybe I'm missing something because I didn't watch the movie, but a lot of people discussed it. And of course, you have a lot of you have a lot of people who are against the movie for very stupid reasons. I don't want to even get into that. But I thought the people who had like some, let's say, level-headed criticisms, it just didn't appeal to me. It's just I'm okay with Indiana Jones. Like if he's gonna get older, that's fine. If he's more physically limited, that's interesting. But the things that I hear they did to him, like as far as his character goes, I'm like, do we have to do that with everyone? Like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Indiana Jones. Like, do we have to like just bring them down into the mud and just like? Anyway, sorry for a rant. I mean, you enjoyed it. I'm ranting all over it. I'm sorry. I'm happy you enjoyed it, really. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to be uplifted by Indiana Jones, you know?
I agree.
Yeah, but I'm sorry because you told me you liked it, and I'm like, I haven't even seen it. I'm pooping all over it, which is really, really impolite of me. I apologize, but but Harrison Ford looks awesome as always. Like even like that guy was. I can tell at least from what I've seen that character is he's still that guy, right? He's still like he's still cool. Like that guy will be cool forever. It's just I don't know. What other directors do we have in this day and age that are just like that type of effortless cool? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I feel like you can make anyone go to the gym and all that, and okay, now you're gonna pose and we're gonna make you look cool, but just effortlessly, you know, like that just shows up. I have a little grin, and you're like, that's a cool guy. Yeah,
I think Cruise does that very well too.
Yeah, Cruise. I think Cruise is like more like this intensity about him, right? He's also cool, but in a different way. He's like so intense.
It's not like he's a young man anymore either. You know, he just turned 60.
Yeah, that is crazy to me. That's yeah, and you're like that guy must obviously he's like at least like coloring his hair, but maybe he has a wig at this point. I don't know, but
and he works out pretty hard. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
I know that guy, like Tom Cruise is just what's kind of funny is a few years ago, like Justin Bieber, and that came out of nowhere. I don't know what that was about. Justin Bieber like challenged Tom Cruise to an MMA fight, which made no sense. No one knew what that was about, and of course Tom Cruise didn't even respond because it was a dumb thing to post. But the thing is that if it had happened, I don't care how much younger Justin Bieber is.
Oh.
Was it Justin Bieber? Yeah, it made no sense. It was this crazy thing. I don't care. I'm sure Tom Cruise is he's so like out there that he would have won. I'm sure he would have trained he would have done the things to do to win that fight.
Yeah, I think so. He is a very, he's had a reputation as a pretty boy, but he is very focused and this, by the way, this new film he's in is only part 1, so there's going to be a part 2, and so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other questions about about that book? That's the only one I have coming out right away.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you when Subway's coming out or when the Bureau books will be out, but my experience with my new publisher is just not that great. So not that complete. I mean, they're a great publisher, but I just don't have a track record with him yet, so I don't know.
I mean, they might be, to be fair to them, they might be waiting for sales or to kind of schedule stuff around. So they're a new publisher, right? Completely new?
Well, they've been around for a while. The name of the publisher, one of the publishers that I started to go to was named Untreed Reads. Untreed Reads, obviously, about electronic books, right? But they were bought out by Top of the World, and Top of the World has bought out about 5 or 6 smaller publishers, and they've become a pretty good-sized publisher. And they have created these imprints, and as I said, my imprint's going to be Novus Mundi, which, interestingly enough, means New World in Latin, right?
Yeah.
But I just don't have a track record with them yet, and so I don't know. They're trying to do so much in such a short time. I just don't know how fast things are going to work out. But I do know I have a new home, and I'm pretty darn happy about that.
Well, it's kind of funny because when I wanted to tag on social media when I announced you as the guest for July, I was trying to keep up. Even I was rereading your emails and seeing which ones are on social media or not, and which one I had posted recently. And I actually I was like, wait, so I don't remember which ones I found or not. So now it's Top of the World is a current publisher, and Novus Mundi is one of their
imprints, right? You know, like it's like I guess Tor is kind of an imprint of some pub like Macmillan or something. I don't know, you know, and I don't know a lot about them yet, except that my purchasing editor is with them, and he is a good guy, and he is really excited. So I think that's good for us. Well, you know, I don't know if I have anything else to say, but
I mean, I'm really excited because it really feel like you know, you're talking about how the publisher wants to push like A.I One, previously I One and A.I One. I think novels written in the first tense have to be very specific types of books, you know, and this sounds like the kind of project where you want to do that. So, and it's just like I'm really happy that you have that push right now. Um, it takes a lot of, especially because you're very prolific, right? So I do feel like you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you have this momentum when you're writing where if you had to kind of start focusing on other stuff, it might take away. Like if you had to start like overly trying to market it, you know, yourself or online
right.
or whatever. And do you want to deal with that aspect? Because you know, social media can be weird sometimes, and so if the publisher can like do that part of the work, that's all the better, really, because it leaves you to do what you do best, which is write a lot, you know, and you write different stories that are not all the same, you know, which is also impressive. Um, and even when in the bureau, you're like the big point you made is like, oh, the books can be very different adventures. So even within the same series, you like to mix it up. So it's like it leaves you to do what you do best, and I'm really happy that that's their focus. And I really feel about, and I had started listening to Shadow Warriors before our first interview, and since then, to my shame, I haven't picked up any of the adult books, which I really have to, if only to read like a bit of it, you know, and get into that your worlds more. But it really feels that you're about to. I feel like you're one of those guys that are just around the corner from getting really noticed by a lot of people. You know, it's just one of those things that it feels like you're just around that corner. Like at any moment now, you're gonna explode.
Well, I certainly hope so. I'll tell you what. When we get through here in a minute, send me your address. I have some copies of I One, the older version that was just cut. They sent me some printed copies, the one that didn't get out and then they shut down the thing, right? If you'll give me your address, I'll send you one of the I Ones. If AI One comes out as promised, it'll have a different cover. Yeah. But this, it's the exact same words on the inside. So if you want, send me an email and I'll just mail you a book, okay?
Oh man, thank you. Okay. Are you gonna sign it? Are you gonna?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
That sounds amazing. I'll doesn't matter how much value it gains, I'll keep it. It's
well, it'll surely be unique because I'm not sure we ever sold any, even though they printed some. The company shut down, and I'm not sure any ever even got sold. And since they shut down, I didn't even get any of my royalties. So you know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. But anyway, send me your physical address, and I'll just put one of these in a little box and send it to you. Okay.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you. That's really kind of you. Really kind of you. Now, as soon as people hear about it, everyone's gonna want to interview you. You're like, yeah, if you interview Nathan, he's gonna send you a book.
Oh, I'll always be glad to send you a book. Like I said, this is the old cover, but you know, they're not changing anything on the inside at all.
That makes it a collector's item. It's always about the those books that saw very little print or were barely released, and then those are the ones that you want to collect. Those are the rare ones. Yeah. Well, Nathan, listen. Thank you very much for your time. I'm really excited for what's coming for you. And I cannot wait for the Bureau books. That sounds so much fun. You're like talking about these stories, and I'm like, and the Portal series I want to pick up very soon. I'm like, that's the one that I want to really check into. I mean, all of them are some fun, but I'm just thinking my shopping list, if you will. I One, apparently I don't need to go looking for it.
Don't try to get I One, because I'll get you a copy of that. Okay.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying, that I don't need to put in my shopping list because that one's coming to me.
Don't do that.
Yeah, and yeah. So it's been a fun chat. Thank you again. Thank you very much for coming to my show. Anything that you'd like to put out there before we conclude?
I don't think so. I'd just like to tell you that if you'd like to have me back about a year and a half from now, I'd be glad to tell you where we are, and I might even send you another book. What the heck?
Well, there you go. That's that. At this point, I'll bring you back every 3 months or something. Every time I finish a book, like, oh, what happens next? Okay, I'm gonna invite him to the show. Well, no, I joke, but yeah, I would love to. It's always fun to have you over, and like I said, at some point, pretty sure you're gonna hit it big. So at that point, please don't forget me.
Oh, I won't. Well, I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you for sure next year. Okay.
Okay, well, let's do it again next year, and as always, same thing. Like, just send me an email when you think the time is right, and for sure we're gonna find a way to coordinate our timeline, or time zones rather, not timelines. Although we're talking sci-fi, so timelines may be appropriate too. Who knows? Okay, Nathan, thank you very much for coming to the show.
Hey, thank you, Bruno. I really enjoyed it. Okay.
Everyone, thanks for watching.
Bye. Take care.